Everyone. I'm Hessie Jones, and welcome to our company's Generation X think tank. If you are joining us for the first time, we started this Gen X generational think tank series about a year ago, trying to debunk some of the myths and stereotypes around millennials. And as the series grew, we started adding more generations to gain different perspectives across the same topics. And since then, we've gained like amazing traction and built a really, really strong community and even more amazing chemistry among our panelists. So this chemistry has made it possible for us to have a lot of these civil and very honest conversations across all these topics. So tonight we're actually tackling the topic of mentorship and its value today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. I had to actually research this because I didn't know this either, but the notion of apprenticeship started like way back, ancient Rome, medieval England, and to ensure that a skilled craft was honed and perpetuated over time. The Industrial Revolution actually morphed this idea into the whole notion of on-the-job apprenticeships, and they spent sizable investment in time, almost like a year, teaching new employees about these skills before they could even profit from their work. But once the business started booming, the demand for these skills also grew to a point that those who are actually in the right place at the right time could afford to actually jump ship for better paying positions even before training period ended. So you see what's kind of happening here. As people became more skilled, it was cheaper for a lot of companies to actually poach them than to actually train them. And so what happened next is that companies started recruiting the best from colleges and universities, and they actually started developing their own in-house training programs to mitigate this the loss that they were getting from the poaching, but also to devise this notion that you could stay in this company forever and move up this company ladder. So, and that concept in itself rarely exists today. And as we know, industry is changing at lightning speed. We're struggling to actually keep up. The whole definition of mentorship is actually changing. For kids coming out of college, how are you expected to know what to do when the career that you want to go in hasn't existed in, let's say, 10 or 20 years? The whole workforce is also changing. The freelance economy is here. Everybody knows that. The remote workforce is becoming more of a reality. And there's this more expectation of work that's much different than it was 20 years ago. And work-life balance becomes a little bit more of a norm today. So you as Gen Xers have lived through a lot of these changes. You've understood the traditional definition of mentorship. But you're also at a stage in life where you understand what it takes for the new generation to succeed in a world of uncertainty. Okay, so apologies for being long-winded, but I wanted to kind of give you a level set of where things were at before things have changed to present day. So I want to introduce our panel, and please state your name and where you fall within the Gen X spectrum, and state whether or not you had a mentor at any point in your lifetime. Okay, so why don't we start with Benson?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm Benson Hendricks. At 42, I'm a little on the younger end, I think, of the Gen X spectrum. I've had a couple of mentors in my life as I went from working in a newspaper, working my way through college, and then after graduation, one of my professors was a really, really good mentor for me. He helped me kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my career PR-wise. And since then, I've had some of my peers have been my mentors, other Gen Xers out here in Albuquerque, kind of figuring out amongst ourselves how we're going to make this work. I've even had a couple of millennials who kind of mentored me along too a little bit.
So did you seek out your mentors? Like when you talk about mentorship early in your career, it's different than, let's say, your peer mentorships or even the millennials who've mentored you. How do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, when I was especially at the newspaper and when I was first entering college, a lot of my mentors were, kind of traditional, older people who'd been in the industry a long time, and they had kind of, I don't want to say outdated views of how business was going, but they were still very much in the, you go to the company, you work 25 years, you get your Rolex, and eventually you get to retire working at the same company. Um, and just I could see as technology was growing that that wasn't how things were going to be. That that was kind of a bygone Mad Men-esque kind of era of staying with the same company, and especially as I switched away from trying to be an engineer and moving into PR and social media, I knew that there was going to be a lot of kind of world-changing technology as we saw with the internet, with social media, with what we're seeing now in blogging and video blogging for what we do as an industry. Um, and I started, my peers then started to kind of become my mentors a little more there because we were all going through this at the same time,
Right.
and we're trying to help each other out.
Okay, so would you say, like, early in your career when you talked about the company that you work for and the fact that these guys were dinosaurs, was there a proactive step to actually mentor people, or was that because I want to, especially for us being Gen Xers, I want to really see whether or not some of us have actually lived through the traditional view of what a mentor was supposed to do for you, and from the perspective of even succession planning.
It wasn't really set out at the company. I had to kind of look at some of the people I was working with and say, oh well, I like Mark's writing style. He works in the sports department. That's where I'm starting to work more. So I started, taking him out to coffee, or I'd sit down with him and say, hey, I'd start proactively trying to find those mentors, because I had, a lot of questions. Basically, how do I do my job better? How do I not get fired? How do I get off the bottom rung of the ladder? Because I don't want to be here if I do hang out 25 years for that Rolex. So.
How old were you at that time when you started seeking them out?
Probably early to mid 20s.
Okay.
This was after the failed attempt to be an engineer. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I was kind of mid 20s, I would say, and they were probably 10 years, 15 years older than me, depending. There was some age range in the newsroom. So.
Okay. Okay, Douglas.
Yes. Well, I've been thinking about this, Hazzy, since you brought the topic up here, trying to figure out where the first mentorship I think I would describe as having really started from. And I got to be honest, I came from a family where I had a broken home situation where my mom took care of my brother and I for a little bit. And I think there was a time when I got into music. I started playing trumpet when I was in 4th grade. And I had what started out as a traditional sort of instructor-student relationship with the first guy who kind of really started telling me to pick up the horn and how to play it, and really kind of show me what's going on with this thing. But it turned more into life skill training and thinking about what I wanted to do when I got older, and realizing that music can be a part of your life no matter if you're sitting on the Boston Pops, if you're playing in a ska band, or if you haven't picked up that horn in 20 years and you want to pick it up for alumni weekend when you go back to a college, alumni weekend or homecoming or something. And I think it started with that. And when I started thinking back on that, Hesse, I started thinking there's been an interesting way that even the concept of mentorship, what has really changed about what it means to have mentorship, has been very intriguing to me. My last name is Knight, and so I was kidding around with the sort of the knight and the squire thing. When I had a mentor, I was his squire, and I'm trying to learn what's going on and what's what. And I found that when I was thinking back at the people who I would consider mentors, the best thing for me about them had very little to do with the brick and mortar that we were in that maybe put us together. So if it was a job and the environment of the job, there was some work that was being introduced to me, or concepts are being introduced. But to me, the mentorship thing is always about sort of the attitude and the impressions and the strive for something. And those are the people who I always look at as like those are the mentors that I wanted, and then now what I want to be. I'm right around the same age. I just turned 43 just a few days ago on the 13th, and so of course when you get around your birthdays, when you're a Gen Xer like us, right? I think we go back and we start thinking about where we were and what we're doing, and I was realizing that to me the best mentors are the ones that can translate the what's in front of me that I'm teaching you because that's what's in front of us. The best ones are the ones that can translate that into what's going to happen 5, 6, 10 years down the road for you, and how you can start pointing your compass that way and getting there. So I always find that that's the most amazing thing about mentoring, is that you can get people in the day-to-day, but you can also cue people up for their next day and their day after that and their 5, 10 years down the road. And I'm wondering if we are at a point where we really are embracing mentorship the way that we should because of our economy, where we are and what we're doing. If mentoring is dynamically changing, a lot of us are solo entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs that get together for project-wise, but not necessarily every day at the water cooler talk is not necessarily exactly the same as it was, in the 80s and 70s and that kind of thing. So I'm really fascinated by this. And I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody else what they're thinking about it too, because I think mentoring is such an amazing thing and is one of those. I think everyone can get a PhD from mentoring if you really think about it. There's a lot that you can get from it and glean from it, and I'm always fascinated by what we can do to sort of move this ideas down to the next group that come up, and mentoring is the way to do it for sure.
Okay. No, very cool. Okay, Ryan. And I'm glad that Ryan is here because he has an interesting story to share about mentoring. So can you just give us some background? I forgot to ask Doug. So you're middle Gen X, so younger Gen Xer, Doug?
I guess I'm a younger, 43. So I'm sort of born in the early 70s, kind of.
Okay. Okay, and I just forgot to ask you too. So Doug, you are part of a not-for-profit Connect the Dots movement, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're a consulting firm that works with nonprofits and social enterprises on this idea of the connection economy and how we can sort of connect our group spaces a little bit more in terms of our community build and how we can all benefit from each other's skill sets.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, apologies. Go ahead.
That's all right. So my name is Ryan Pennell. I'm a hedge fund manager, and I had a couple of mentors. I had one that was more, I don't know, life-changing, you might say, than others. I was lucky, although I'm not sure I saw that exactly correctly at the time. But I started my career when I was 19 in film and television, and as a development executive, which in film and TV is a nice way of saying the guy that gets like the dry cleaning and coffee and shit. So they don't, PAs are like on set, and if you work for a studio, which I did, you're a development executive. Sounds great to everyone else except if you're in the business, and then they know you're a peon. So I was fortunate, and I worked essentially for the president of production for this huge film studio, and whenever I relate stories about him, I just call him Bob. Wasn't his name, but to maintain his privacy and the fact that he's like 87 and could probably still strangle me to death. So even though he's mellowing out in Napa playing golf, anyway. So at the time, Bob was pretty perfect as a mentor, and he would have been in his mid-50s at that time. And I didn't get it when I was 19, but Bob was probably a screw-up when he was 20 or 25 or 28 or 30 or something like that, but I didn't know that guy. And often when you're subordinate to someone who's very established, you're seeing them after all their problems, all their learning experience, all the disasters that they've gone through. And I'm sure Bob was no exception, but all I saw was this well-formed executive who had nothing but valuable things to teach, didn't make any mistakes. And that to me was extremely valuable. And what he focused on was the stuff that nobody teaches you. I mean, you're mentored in a work role, and you're going to learn something about doing that job. But the more valuable things that Bob shared with me were those amorphous things that passed down in that, as Benson said, the madman era. How to dress, what to wear to this kind of meeting versus that kind of meeting, how to shake a hand properly, like just stuff that your dad probably should have told you but didn't tell you. And you're not going to learn that in school. You have no idea. They don't teach you anymore the various types of business correspondence, how to write them, how to sign off, how to address somebody, how to answer the phone, how to prepare for a meeting. These are all things you learn a bunch of nonsense about ROI and deprioritized workforces in business school, if you go to business school or any other kind of professional education. No one tells you actually how to be in business with everybody else, all these people that you're interacting with. And that to me was the most valuable. I didn't learn it all in the beginning because I was too stupid. And I thought Bob was a dinosaur sometimes. And later I thought, damn it, that's why Bob did that.
So
12 years later. But
can I ask, did you seek Bob out, or
no,
how were you?
All.
Okay.
Not at all. I applied for a job. It's film and television, so there was some nepotism involved. And it was like, can you take on this kid? It was through my stepmother. And I didn't know who Bob was. I didn't know the significance there. I was just really, really lucky. I just sort of came out of high school and had 3 different job opportunities, and I picked that one. There's just something about him. He had a lot of presence. So I got lucky.
And I think that's something that I think if you were ever, or any of you ever worked in like traditional enterprise, like I worked in banking, even when I started, there was almost this undisclosed mentorship program that happened in banks, right? There would always be a buddy system. Somebody would show you the ropes, how to wield your way through certain meetings, who was the right person to talk to about certain things. But they would kind of be, and they were a bit older, but they'd always give you it, and it wouldn't be the same as like a Bob, but it would be someone that would be there with you at least for the first 3-4 months, and then eventually they could be a mentor. But they would help you succeed in the first, let's say, period of probation when you're at the bank. And it just seemed to be something that happened. It was because people wanted everybody to succeed. So it was over and above training you to do the job, but also kind of navigating through the workplace in a successful way. And like you said, Ryan, it's like, especially a kid coming out of school not realizing the true etiquette of how to position yourself within that kind of environment. It was critically important. And I think that's something that it's missing today. Do you all agree that, like, I mean, in your lifetime, have you seen like this decline in mentorship, and why do you think that is? Who wants to tackle that?
Well, I think there's definitely been a decline in mentorship, and we've spoken about this on another think tank, I think, maybe the blended one or whatnot, and it's that the migration through professional careers is different than it was. As Benson said, it was like, you're with the company for 40 years, you get your Rolex, you retire, and you move on. No one does that anymore. I mean, you're there for 3 to 5 years, maybe. You don't have any company stock, like literal company stock, as you might have. If you were a VP of Kodak 20 years ago, you probably had a decent amount of company stock, so you actually gave a shit what was going on with the company, and you had a vested interest in making sure that it continued in the right direction. Not to mention that you just, in terms of custodianship, you didn't want to see 40 years of your own life's work handed off to some nitwit. So you made sure that whoever it was that was taking over from you, and at that time, you always knew who that was. There was a succession that was pre-decided. It wasn't like an internal hire. It wasn't a surprise, gee, I'm retiring this year. You hit 65, you punched out your ticket, you got your gold watch, and you passed that torch along to somebody who you had made certain was capable to continue your life's work, because I think you really felt that. Today, 3 to 5 years, next thing, we've all got disparate goals. I'm just here until I can buy my boat. I'm just here until I can move to Florida. I'm just here until my wife graduates from medical school, whatever it is. So everybody's got all of these disparate little personal goals. I don't really care about passing the torch to my successor, because I'm not even going to look back once I walk out that door. I'm saying one, not necessarily me. And I think that is a huge disincentive to mentoring, because mentoring takes a lot of effort that you're not paid for. You got to put effort and energy into training somebody else to do a job that you're not even going to be around to witness them doing. I mean, I'm talking about succession mentoring, not just not being a twit.
Mm-hmm. And that, Benson, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to add on to what Ryan said, that I don't think it's just, we're leaving jobs after 3 to 5 years. It's that if you're mentoring someone, who's a junior partner to you, for instance, the way corporations are set up now, there's a good chance that at the end of 3 to 5 years, you're not leaving, you're getting shoved out the door. And the person that you've been mentoring all of a sudden kind of gets ushered into your job at 2/3 of the pay. So I think that's something else that maybe we're not tackling consciously, but subconsciously there's always that someone's looking to knife me in the back concern.
Yeah, there's who was I speaking to? I think it was Steve Dodd at one point, and he talked about the fact that the people that he trains and mentors in the work, in the jobs that they get into, he basically says, I have a commitment to you while you're here, but I can only make you the best that you can be, realizing that you're going to be better going out than coming in, right? Because if there is an expectation that people will leave, either of their own volition or because the company downsizing, then the point of mentoring starts to take a different turn, and it's about maybe more individualistic mentoring as opposed to succession planning, right? But like to Ryan's point as well, that changes the commitment and the motivation of the person that actually mentors, and because there's no stake in the game for them, right? And I think if any of you, so let me ask this question, and maybe Doug will ask you, are you a mentor yourself?
Yeah, see, this is where I think it's very cool this question comes up, because I think in this era, we're defining mentorship differently, because I think, to Ryan's point, mentorship used to be based around setting. You were in a company and you had X years, and you had a mentor above you who was there for a good chunk of years, probably more than you, who could show you the ropes, right? That was the verbiage we would use, would be, come here, kid, I'll show you around, and I'll give you the inside, and I'll tell you where all the bodies are buried, right? It was all this sort of stuff about, we knew this person was there for a long time and had a huge amount of knowledge, and it was knowledge that could take the company forward, take the project forward, and there was a bit of a legacy thing. The guy on the end, just about to get that Rolex, is thinking, if I get somebody in here who can continue this on, how great would that be for me to see this legacy move forward? Now that we're sort of a little bit more separated, and again, to Ryan's point, that the 3 to 5 year window is very often what folks are doing on the corporate side, not even to mention the entrepreneurial and social enterprise thing that's happening. I think the second part of this is technology. So you have folks coming into businesses where, before the technology existed, networking truly meant grip and grin, being around people for a long period of time, getting to know them one-on-one, and literally looking people in the eye and say, that's Jane, husband's name is Joe, dog's name is Fluffy, they've been there for 40 years, and I hung out at their house and had martinis every Thursday night with them. Now it's changed so much with things even like this, where Google Hangouts and things can really bring us into a more of a networking setting quicker, more often. You can build up seniority, if you will. You cut the line for seniority now, because we can build our friendships and our allies and our assets so much faster than I think there was before, that even the definition of mentoring, I think, has changed. So to answer your question, Hesse, do you think I'm a mentor? I hope I'm mentoring someone at some point, but I think it's now in sort of, it's like almost niche mentoring, where you can sort of say, hey, you got a great skill set when it comes to technology talent, But what you really need to work on is your life skill training. You need to know, hey, in a meeting like this, it's suit and tie. Or in a meeting like this, it's make sure you look the person right in the eye and say hello. And it's Mr. This and Ms. That. And it's those little things. Someone said to me the other day, and I thought this was brilliant, we all know how to write. But when was the last time you did a handwritten thank you note? And do you know how to do that? And it's amazing how these little things, it's the small things now that matter. And I think that's where mentoring is really coming into play now. Because the difference between somebody who knows a whole lot of technology stuff and a whole lot of technology stuff plus life skill training, you can see that very much. And that could be the difference between building into a network and not. And I think that's where mentoring really happens now. So it's not necessarily every day I got someone on my arm or I'm taking them around the office and showing them what Cubicle Kingdom is about and here are the landmines to worry about. I think nowadays mentoring is even more along the lines of let's meet for coffee and see how things are going, and let's also take a look at what happens when we're in a group setting and how you act and react to things.
Okay. Now, the one thing that you said, and I think this is more indicative of what's going on today, because where education used to kind of teach us things about the jobs that were out there, and how to actually develop our own skills based on our education so that we be marketable for a job. It just doesn't exist. So in reality, part of the mentoring role is to find people that can give you kind of like that education or that cornerstone of education that your school didn't give you. And so, and I want to know if you guys agree that in a lot of cases today, because a lot of that doesn't exist within the school system, is the mentor-mentee relationship almost like a sales call? Is there more of a demand for mentors now because there's not as much, let's say, knowledge and training in areas where they really need it?
I don't know if there's more of a demand. I think there's a lack of acknowledgement that true mentorship is valuable. I see that all the time. I see, the younger people entering the workforce shrugging off like, I sent an email, I sent a text, what's the big deal? Like they just don't get that there is this nonverbal business communication that exists that will mark you as badly as, who gives a shit how you hold your silverware when you're eating dinner, right? I mean, why do we all learn how to hold a fork in a specific way? You can hold it like this, you can hold it like this, gets the job done, puts food in your mouth. But one identifies you as being from a certain social niche, and the other identifies you as being from a different social niche. And that's something that's just transmitted across the table without you saying anything. And so your parents want you to be identified with the cultured niche, and they teach you how to hold your fork and knife in the specific way. And it's no different to how you dress, how you communicate, how you address somebody, the same thing. And you've got at least a good chunk of the next generation who says, I don't care, big deal. We've joked about this before on that other think tank where, the intern who was, I was his boss's 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 boss, flipped me an email that said, hey Ryan, what's up? It's like, I don't even know your last name, dude, but that's not a great way to start this relationship. You don't have to call me Mr. or Sir, but, good morning, Ryan. Wondering if we could have a chat later on today instead of yo bro, like the watch you were rocking yesterday afternoon.
Why do you think, and this is that there's a question I didn't ask when you actually had talked about that story then, but I mean there is a marked difference between somebody coming out into, let's say, an internship program or as a newbie into a company at their age and when we were their age. Like we behaved differently. We behaved and we morphed with the organization the way we were supposed to be. Why do you think that I don't know if it's rebellion, but why do you think that let's say the millennials are having a hard time with adjusting? Is it adjusting, or is it just, do we have to adjust their way? Like, what's going on? Why don't they have those skill sets?
Anytime you have a missing, like a deficit in skills like you see there, you can't blame the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old for not having the skills. They don't even know that they should have them. You got to blame who they were supposed to get them from, which is at that age their parents. If you still don't have them by the time they're 26, you were talking about having a mentor that was your immediate senior, maybe not 5 or 6 rungs up the chain, but somebody who was like the 3 months, would shadow you and make sure you knew that, like, it's that person's job to make sure, or should be that person's job to help you with this. It's you can't blame them for not having skills that they can't magically suck through osmosis. Somebody had to teach them, hey, listen, this is the way you address people. This is the way you craft this correspondence. This is how you dress. This is a hierarchy, and how you respect that. I mean, everyone, rebellion's great. I mean, we were, as GenXers, we're pretty rebellious, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, way back when,
We just did it better.
Else. Yeah. And I'm sure the boomers would say the same, and so would everybody. Yeah, we knew how to really be angsty. Yeah, I remember, when I was in my late 20s and working at a corporate gig, and they had, a casual Friday, which I learned later was, like wear a button down and khakis, and I wore like skater cargo pants and a Bruce Lee t-shirt. And I remember the CFO walking past me and just shaking his head like, God, where did we find this guy? And I felt very, very individualistic at the time, but what I didn't quite grasp is that, I had a high-ranking position despite my age. And when I'm then wandering into a board meeting the next Tuesday, and I'm delivering my evaluation, and this board is supposed to act on that evaluation, this guy's going to be thinking about that idiot wearing the cargo pants and the Bruce Lee t-shirt, and he's going to think, I don't know, like I shot up my own credibility, right or wrong. That's a byproduct of behaving in that way. Yeah. So I think if they don't have these skills, we're the next generation. It's us that failed them.
Well, I think the main thing is I think everybody goes through one of those mishaps, and as long as they learn from them, that's totally different. I think, what is that saying? Not fool me once, but shame on me if I'm told to do it once, but then
George Bush your way out of this one.
I can't.
Just leave that there. It was horrible.
Oh, I'm not gonna do. Okay, I won't. Okay, the minute you said George Bush, I said, okay, forget it, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, I'm good. So
it's just to finish that off. It's every generation mentored the next generation except ours. Honestly, I'm pro Gen X, as hardcore as you can possibly get. But when it came time for us to mentor the millennials, when it came time, we didn't do it. We didn't do our thing, right? They showed up, and instead of taking a deep breath and saying, okay, yeah, you have no idea what you're doing, and I find some of your behaviors kind of obnoxious and annoying, but hey, I'm sure I really annoyed the shit out of my mentor, so I'm just going to do the job I'm supposed to do. We said, screw this. We vent on blogs, we vent online. We didn't do it. The boomers raised them. We were supposed to mentor them. We didn't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was laughing when Ryan was saying that, because I kept thinking that Who song, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. We came into this, I think, as a generation. And we looked at the boomers, and philosophically, we collectively said, you fools ran up the credit card, you put all this stuff into battles and wars and all this shit, and we have all the battles that we constantly said, and we said, we're so angst-driven, we're going to do it differently. And part of what we did differently was just sort of tune ourselves out to the most basic thing that generations do, which is the mentoring of the generation behind you, to simply say, we don't have all the answers, but we can tell you where some of the landmines are, and just be careful about those, and then find your path and find your way. Because we all decided on different things. I find it mildly ironic that if you look at a lot of the social publications, especially in the social enterprise sphere, there is a truth in that we have the baby boomers and the millennials, the two largest generations of our country, both together, and that sort of mix is a very interesting thing. But often in this conversation, Gen X is sort of left out, right? We're sort of the odd man out in this formula often, and I find that ironic, because the way that I sort of look at this, is I look at us as like the perfect bridge between what's going on between these two generations if we took advantage of it collectively. And I'm not sure we did. I think I tend to agree with Ryan on that a little bit, that I think we maybe missed the boat a little bit on the opportunity and responsibility to do some mentoring. But I think there's a second part of this that I do believe has something to do with that, and that is the rise of the technology. I think millennials, the attitude that a millennial comes out with, simply might have to do with they look around the current job situation, whether it's in corporate America, small biz, nonprofit, or even on their own as an entrepreneur, and I think they say to themselves, the business model today is, I know more shit than these guys do. So let me just kind of get what I can get, squeeze a little bit out of the 3 to 5 years I'm at this place, whatever, and when I move on to the next thing, I'll do the same thing. And it's more of sort of siphon information with a feeling like I already have this down because technology is in my corner. I know what it is. I know, and I think that's why we hear a lot of, on the millennial side, this sense of like they've got it already, where we're all, as the Gen Xers and above, look at them shaking their heads going, nah, I don't think you do, because we didn't either when we were at that point. This is the beauty of being a little bit older and a little bit grayer, is I think we realize, like, yeah, we didn't have our shit together, and now we know, and this is what we're trying to let you know about. But I think technology is either balancing the scales, some would argue, or, to my way of thinking, I think it distorts somebody's expertise. It makes them think that they know much more and are prepared more than they really are. And it's I think incumbent upon us to really find a way to say, hey, stick with me for a little bit. Let me give you some inside baseball on this. And you're right. You know what? You probably have the next 40 apps that I don't even know their names of yet that are probably coming down the road. You probably already have on your phone. But that doesn't mean you know what it takes to make a sale or build a friendship. You know, in my biz for the nonprofit sector, I always say it's friend raising before fundraising. And all these millennials that come in and say, like, oh yeah, no, I could bring money in like this. I say, yeah, you can bring in some money. That's great. And then what happens next year? You have to go back and ask again and again and again and again. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build legacy in terms of people saying, I don't wait for the ask. I want to help. I'm just going to give. And that's a very different way of doing things. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with, as Ryan was saying, I think we need, as a collective generation, we need to sort of realize, like, it's still on us to sort of lead. Because if we don't, we should just move out of the way. Because, you know, we could get to the point where we just become a problem for what's the natural development of business and what's happening. But I think we see it because we saw what the baby boomers did and didn't do, and we see what the millennials know and what they don't know, and we're either going to be the ultimate generation of standing by and watching, or we're going to be the ones who say, F this, let's dive in both feet and let's make it happen.
Yeah, I think there's another side to what you said as well. As much as they think that they know, there's also this defensive mode where they don't want to be caught you know, being downsized again, as they have been, let's say, multiple times in their early careers. So what they do is they try to grab as much, let's say, skill set and experience in one thing, and then move on and say, okay, I know that, now I have to know something else, because right now the only way to really market themselves is if they have multiple experiences. Okay. One thing, but you touched on something else, and I think you're right. It's not too late to do this, but I think this is where we dive into the next question. What are the things what are the traits and qualities that you guys think make a student or a millennial worth mentoring? Because that's, to me, is you know, cast aside their prima donna status, whatever. If you were to take the time to mentor someone, and we know it's not about getting them to you know, further up the ladder. Now it's just based on, because you have the knowledge and the wisdom to help them. If you were going to take the time out of your schedule to mentor somebody, what traits would they have to have in order for you to say, yeah, you're worth doing it for? Benson, did you want to talk about that?
Oh, first off, I would have to ask if they needed a participation trophy or not. No, I'm kidding. I'm a smart aleck. I apologize. But
And you would have one for them.
I would. I would say curiosity. Usually the people I mentor are my friends or people I meet through my friends. I was part of our I work at the University of New Mexico, and I was part of our university's Public Relations Student Society of America's mentorship program. And the first step that the students had to show was that they were interested in getting mentorship, in learning, in wanting to know not just, hey, what do I need to do to get my degree and get out of here, but also, what should I look for in the workplace? How do I become a better employee or a better entrepreneur? So I kind of look for that. It's just curiosity and a willingness to kind of just sit down over a beer or a cup of coffee or lunch and really kind of dissect what they want out of the next phase of their life. If it's somebody who just wants to know, hey, how do I schmooze to get the next open VP position or whatever, it's like you're coming to the wrong person. But I make it an investment of my time, and I kind of hope that they'll do the same. I kind of expect that.
So the quid pro quo from your perspective, it's actually learning from you. It's not necessarily leveraging your contacts necessarily to get them to where they want to go. Because when I talked initially earlier about this notion of like the mentee and the mentor relationship being more of a sales job, there are mentees out there that are looking for people that let's say I want to know a data scientist because I want to work at Google or something, even if they don't work at Google. But the idea is going over and above a mentee-mentor relationship to actually get to the ideal position. So, and I think that's where we have to figure out, like, what are the trait, obviously, for you is that I guess that commitment, right? And
yeah, and it's not that I don't try to be too much of a smart aleck or a jerk about it, but it's like, deep down I want to see these younger professionals succeed. Not for myself, but just because I want them to go on and have a bigger, better, brighter career than I was at that age.
mm-hmm.
In part because I was, on the bottom rung of the newspaper at that age, and that sucked. And I'm like, I don't want to wish that on them.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
I kind of look at it as a responsibility as a professional to prepare the next generation of professionals in my industry to go on and do bigger and better and make us proud.
Okay. Doug, so from your perspective, what traits do you think are admirable in order for someone to actually gain enough of your trust to actually mentor them?
This is an easy peasy for me because I talk about this quite a bit. For me, it begins and ends with passion. I need somebody who's passionate for what they're doing. If somebody's going through the routes for that, I'll find them someone who can give them the Rolodex or the those kind of things that they're looking for. I'm more than happy to sort of find somebody like that for you. I'm not interested in that, and I don't want anybody around, and I don't want to waste their time or mine on stuff. So my first thing is passion. I want somebody with passion. Of course, I work with a lot of nonprofits and I think folks who typically get in the nonprofit sector, they're obviously not getting in it for the big bucks. They're getting in it for probably a passion and purpose. So I'm very lucky in that the sector that I sort of gravitate into has folks like that, but not often, not always. But I look for passion. That's my first thing. And then sort of secondarily for that is another phrase I use quite a bit when we're talking with clients and working with groups, and that is I believe in hiring for attitude and training for skill. So I look for the attitude thing. I call myself proudly a non-profiteer, and I say that because of the attitude that I think nonprofits are. I think we're a bunch of pirates and a bunch of buccaneers that kind of run around and instead of instead of plundering, I think what we do is we are the great at reallocation of dollars and cents, whether they're change or common, that kind of sense going into some product and purpose. And I want to mentor those who want to do that kind of work, and I want to be around folks like that and absorb and be the mentee for others who are doing things in that way. So for me, first and foremost, it is if somebody has that kind of passion for the work that they're doing, that will intrigue me. And then secondarily, but as a 1A to 1B kind of thing, is that sort of purpose-driven need to be a part of this. I want them to want to have skin in the game and almost be demanding, I'm not all in yet, and I'm trying to figure out how to go all in, and that's why I'm looking for a mentor. I love people like that. Men and women who have that attitude for me are the ones that I want to be around, I want to work with, I want to work for, I want to contract on, that kind of stuff. So for me, that's the big things, a passion and purpose.
Cool. Now, has that ever happened to you? Have you actually run across some youngins that actually have come to you that demonstrate those traits?
Absolutely, absolutely. I had a person who you could argue started off as simply an intern who was really just into the community that here in York, Pennsylvania, was just into the community, but came at it from a really interesting thing. He was a senior in college. And his first 3 years, he barely knew the city, barely knew the community of York, even though he went to York College. He was so insulated on his college campus that he didn't know the community. Well, once he got into it, he fell in love with the city so much that all he wanted to do was absorb it. He was, like a sponge trying to learn things. And I saw immediately in him, forget the internship, forget the nonsense that we're going to have you do in the day-to-day brick-and-mortar stuff. Let's find a way to get this passion out into the community more, and so you can meet some folks and see some things and experience some things. And so we'd have walkabout meetings where instead of sitting at my desk, let's go take a walk around the block, grab a coffee, and I'll say hi to some random folks on the street and just get you to see even more what's happening. And I'm happy to say, and I think part of this was for this. I don't think it was 100%, but I think part of what happened with that was it got him thinking, I want to stick around here. So forget the internship is over, now I'm graduating, I'm going to go back to wherever as I came from. No, I'm going to stay right here and set some roots and see if we can do something within the community and still be as active as he was when he was in a role that basically put him in front of some folks. Now he wasn't in that role and wanted to be there, and I loved it. That's the kind of thing that I love, is when you find somebody who says, I'm looking for a game and I want to go all in, and I see you got a lot of chips, so let me see if I can get some knowledge from you as to how you're playing and how you're betting big, because I want to do the same thing here.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, Ryan, what do you think? Have you mentored or advised?
Yeah, several times, but I don't know. I like the passion that Benson and Doug still have. Mine has been snuffed out. I think everyone would answer the same way, although whether it's passion, commitment, curiosity. I don't think there's any teacher that doesn't value those things in a student. You want to know that you're not wasting your time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even if you get paid to teach, teachers will engage more with the students that show genuine interest than the students that are just showing up. And that's no different for a mentor. I mean, with me, if it's a shot at my Rolodex, like, good luck with that. That's just never going to happen. I'm pretty clear about that at the very beginning. It took me 25 years to get that. I'm just not handing that over. And frankly, there are some things that are just, hours in the saddle. Like, you're not, okay, I could give you the whole Rolodex, and none of those people would return your calls anyway. You just piss them off. So it's not much use for you. And frankly, when they get to a position of needing a network like that, all those people will be retired or close to it anyway. So it's about building your own network. I mean,
can I just add something
Sure.
there? Like, from that perspective, and I think over time, and this is where we talk about the commitment. Nobody should have access to your Rolodex anyway. But I think over time, if trust is built between the two of you, then that's something that you would openly give if the time came, and then you saw value in introducing them to somebody. But definitely it can't be kind of like the going in motivation, right?
Well, no, and it's about something that happens over time. And I guess for me, the last couple of times I agreed to mentor, that was the disappointment for me. Was there was an instant gratification that was desired. It's like, yeah, it took you however many years to do this, but I want it in like 3 months, or I want it in like 6 months.
Right.
So would have I, but it doesn't work that way. There's some stuff you can learn instantly. There's some stuff you can learn in a week. There's some stuff you can learn in an hour, and there's some stuff that you can learn, but the application of it and the development of the skill is going to take a long, long time. And if that's too long for you, then find something else to do with your time. Find a job that's more focused on instant gratification. But what I do and have done career-wise, I'm not forgiving of that kind of attitude. So
Yeah.
it's difficult. I mean, what the real danger that I see, and this goes back to something that Doug was saying earlier, about whether or not we're going to step up, and something that you said as well, is that it's not like if we don't and that we haven't, there's been no mentoring. What's happened is that this generation is getting mentored by its peers. And that is the most dangerous thing that I see, because you have a real circumstance of the blind leading the blind, right? It's like watching teenage parents. It's a freaking nightmare, right? You're looking at, look at a couple of 16-year-olds with a baby, and it's just you're just traumatized watching it.
Well, look at reality TV is also impacting that.
Right? So I've seen this before. I've seen this in some networking things that you and I have done, Hesse, is that where you see these people who are like stepping into a mentor role that are like chronically unemployed and barely able to feed themselves. And I'm thinking, what the shit are you mentoring? Like this person wants to learn how to be a successful startup entrepreneur. And the danger is that in a world of a desire for instant credibility, you got social media, you have these social media influencers, you have a circumstance where you can almost self-generate credibility, right? You get a Wikipedia page, you write on a bunch of blog posts, you write some free articles for Forbes and Inc. and Fast Company and whatever the hell, and all of a sudden you're an expert. And then you get a mentor or a mentee that shows up, says, wow, you're the greatest, I want to learn from you.
Mm.
And that's,
I know.
What are you teaching? What knowledge are you passing
I know.
on? It's the mentor's motivated by the fact that they get a sense of instant significance, right? Well, I mentor a half dozen people. Yes, I'm sure you feel very important, but what are they getting out of it? Something that's going to take some other mentor, 2 years to undo.
Yeah, that's something that's really important, especially today. And I think you're right. First of all, there's this I guess this false branding. When people go to look for mentors, the people who they seek out are not necessarily the people that are right for them, partly because anybody can kind of fake their greatness online. We've seen it time and time again. But there's also this thing, and you guys kind of mentioned it, but I mean, as much as it is our responsibility, there is a quid pro quo. And I mean, whatever we get out of it intrinsically as mentors, and it doesn't have to be compensation, but as long as we know that there is some kind, let's say, of commitment on the other side to somehow, I mean, what do you guys, from your perspective, what would you want to get out of it for you? Like, what is your gain, if not monetarily, to be able to see? Is it to see somebody succeed? Like, what does that do for you? I
think it's not to have that knowledge die with you. I mean, if you're a parent, your kids are going to get it whether they want it or not.
Right.
But I've got two. So other than that, where does where does Bob's knowledge go, right? I mean, he gave it to me. He's got a daughter. She's a political activist, so I'm sure she uses some of it, but not all of it. I was the last person he mentored. I know the person that I was subordinate to got the benefit of some of it. But if I'm not passing this on, and it's died out, no one's teaching it in schools, where's that going? I think for me, it's just it's not a passing the torch in terms of a succession. It's a being a custodian of some really valuable knowledge. You just don't want to see it dry up and die.
Yeah.
So that's the motivation for. I mean, outside of professional mentoring, right? Which is what I do. I guess I have an obligation to take interns and subordinate traders and stuff and make them actually good at what they do. But ultimately, that sort of sacred knowledge thing, just passing it
Right.
on. You want someone that's going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Someone that's going to take it and go, wow, this is gold, man. I mean, thanks so much, and put it to use and then pass it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hesse, if I could add to that, I think there is an absolute responsibility if we want to talk about things like culture and question how culture has been changed or adapted, or say that culture is important and we need to sort of carry that forward. I think the way that happens is in mentoring. I don't think it happens through a book or through a blog or how many Twitter followers you have. I think some of us, maybe, even though we embrace technology fully and we don't skirt from it, I think when we see people who say, oh yeah, no, I'm mentoring, as Ryan said, I got 6 mentees that I'm taking care of, and you realize that the reason that they even have a mentoring program is because they got 1 billion followers on Twitter, that to me does not make a good mentor. That means that's just somebody who's got a lot of, tweets pretty well and people like what he or she's saying. That means nothing to me in terms of what a mentorship should be. But as Ryan said, you were given something, and there is a sense of legacy that comes from mentoring that I think is absolutely essential. And if I could go back to my beginning, when you would ask me, how I sort of grew into mentoring, and I had a music teacher and who to this day I still think of as that, and I firmly believe that if we get off this Google Hangout and I picked up the phone and called him right now, the mentoring would happen right then and there, and he'd be asking me questions about how things are going and how he could help and giving me a word to the wise. And I'm as I'm lying, I'm dying. I'll hang up that phone and I'll feel so much more better about something coming out of his mouth, and I don't know what it's going to be, but it'll be something damn good. That's the kind of mentor that I think everyone strives for, maybe from the Gen X perspective. Now, from the millennial perspective, I don't know if that is necessarily what is being thought of as mentoring, because to your point, Hesse, I think sometimes mentoring is now looked at as show me the ropes, give me some tech skill, maybe lead into a network, and then I'll just take that and move on. Whereas I look at it more like, no, we've got a cultural thing that you need to not only absorb, but then be ready to pass on to the next group, because there is legacy that comes with it. I love that. I mean, I think I cherish that more than I do most things. And when you feel like you have it, and then it's on us to do it, the responsibility is pretty heavy, but also it's pretty badass. I think it's pretty great to know that maybe you could do that for someone. It's now finding the right person. You don't just want to give it to somebody who you think is going to be a dime a dozen and be like, all right, whatever, thanks, man. I'll see you in the never. I want someone who's going to take it and roll with it, and so you can turn around and go, yeah, that's my boy or that's my girl. Look what's happening. This thing is moving to a point that I didn't even realize it could take. I mean, that's what you look for, I think. At least that's what I hope for as a mentor.
No, I agree, and I think the one thing that I realize is that you understand the chemistry between someone that you're mentoring, because they keep coming back, and suddenly you have built a certain amount of trust between you that your mentor is able to tell you things that you don't even want to hear. Right, and sometimes it's you just picking up the phone saying, I have a problem and I need you to help me, talk through it or whatever. But sometimes, like a really, really good mentor is someone who can tell you the things that he sees that where you're failing and where you could, step up, and you're willing in humility to take that advice and run with it, as opposed to, be very critical and I don't know, not as decisive about things, and just say, well, I like what you said here, but I don't like what you said there. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you have to gauge what the best relationship is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
that's right.
one last thing. So Benson, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think Doug and Ryan really hit it on the head with when we're mentoring, when we're working with people who we want to see succeed. We're passing down a legacy of, this is our knowledge, this is what we've learned from the generation before us that took the time to make sure that we had our heads on straight at the right time, and that we did the best job possible. But I think part of that too is it's like a best practices almost. When I look around and I see a lot of stuff going on in PR, and there's a lot of stuff that I look at and go, what the hell is up with that? I want to make sure that the students that I work with get the benefit of, I think this is wrong, this is kind of a more ethical or a better or a different way to do this. And I kind of want to see that kind of passed down as well. It's like there's a better way for us to do our job. Granted, my better way is better than everyone else's better way. But damn it, this is my better way, and I'm going to tell you about it. But I also think a big part of it for me is just seeing the people I work with, seeing how they succeed, seeing, I want to do right by them. I want to make sure that they go on and they have a better life and a better career. And I was just thinking about it. There's, a really good friend of mine out here in Albuquerque. She started her own company last year. She's doing her own kind of agency, her own consulting thing, and she's doing an amazing job. And I never really thought of it as kind of like a mentoring-mentee relationship, but we'd get together, have lunch, kind of bounce ideas around, and she was always really gracious to listen to my ramblings, and maybe that's how mentoring is changing now. Maybe it's not just I see myself as the mentor and you're the person I'm going to give all this information to. It's just we're friends, we want to see each other do well, and if I can be a small part of doing that, then maybe I've done something good with my time.
Yeah, it's a lot more, I think, reciprocal these days, and it's like you said, it's almost not age mandatory anymore. Mm-hmm. You can learn from anybody, right? And whether or not that mentor status ends up being a lot shorter than what we traditionally see, as long as there is some learning out of it. I think the way I look at it too is, especially for kids, like you say, that have the passion, that have the commitment, that are willing to be humble and learn. It's what I kind of force down the throat of my own kids because I'm their parent, right? And they have to listen to me, but not necessarily the ones that aren't related to me, but the ones who actually show that they're willing to learn. They have the benefit of my time. So, okay. So with that, thank you so much. You guys have given so much, insight into this topic. And once we combine this with what the millennials are saying, because the millennials are taking a look at it from a very, very different standpoint. It's like, how do I succeed in this, unruly economy? It'll be good to hear that they actually they can look up to Gen Xers who are willing to invest some of that time in them. So with that, thank you guys for coming, and I think our next segment is going to be about leadership, corporate leadership. So I want you guys to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you again for coming. Thank you everyone out there for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.